Hello and welcome. I am Dawn Gluskin, and this is the Rebel Entrepreneur. And in this interview series, I am talking with some really amazing entrepreneurs and thought leaders who sort of do things a little bit differently. They have an unconventional path to success. And today we have a very unconventional and very awesome guest, Dr. Gabby Pelicci. Hello, Gabby.
Hi.
Thanks for being with us today. We're excited to talk to you.
My pleasure. I love the title Rebel Entrepreneur. As soon as you said it, I was like, yes, sign me up.
You're like, that's me. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Gabby's work, she is an expert in holistic medicine. She has a really cool story. She's been to over 40 different countries. She has over 2,000 hours logged into yoga and body work, meditation, energy healing. And she recently founded the Women in Wellness program. Besides that, she's just this cool like hippie chick that's a doctor and has tattoos. She's a yogi, so that's where the unconventional comes in. So
it's very confusing for people sometimes when I show up. Like, I introduce myself, they're like, "What? Who are you?"
I think it's cool though. So I guess tell us about that. Like, how did you become Dr. Gabby, and then what did you study, and where did you think you were going to go, and how did you end up here? Like, what's your story?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say that it all happened by accident and on purpose, kind of. It's like I sort of followed my curiosity and my passion, and one thing led to another. I, originally thought that I was going to do a traditional degree in psychology. I was always like really fascinated with the mind and with behavior, and I got into that in my undergrad, and then I was introduced to like the holistic therapies. I met this reflexology lady, and she was like massaging my foot, and I was like, oh my God, this is the most amazing experience of my life. And so then I started exploring massage and body work and did that training, and then met some energy healers and yogis and things, and fell in love with the community, fell in love with the people, and I've always been really nerdy and intellectual. Like my dad's a physician, and there's like a lot of kind of professional people in my family. I've always been really nerdy, and I wanted to continue my education. I wanted to continue to study. I wanted to write books and all this stuff. So I found a really cool, unconventional doctoral program in the Bay Area at California Institute of Integral Studies. It was Transformative Studies was the name of the program, and you could write about whatever you wanted. So I enrolled in that program. The professors were amazing and talented and inspiring. And I said, I love this whole world of holistic health and mind-body medicine and yoga, meditation. This is what I want to write about. And they were like, okay. So I wrote my dissertation about women healers. I interviewed women doctors from all kinds of medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine, shamanic medicine, indigenous medicine. I just wanted to be like, what's out there? What's happening? And I had women who had studied in South Africa and Peru and China and everywhere. And I collected their stories, and I listened to what they had to say, and I wrote up my big paper, and then that became the foundation of my teaching for the last 10 years was all the stuff that I learned in my doctoral work and my interviews, my training and stuff like that. So I've been in this space now for nearly 20 years. I never get bored. Like, it doesn't matter like how long I do it. I'm always learning and always growing. And it's just such a cool niche and
I love what you're doing. And there's a big need for it too, because, I'm a yogi also. And so I know a lot of people in that space. I'm also a yoga teacher. And so I get it. There's a lot of people out there that have a lot of love in the work they do, and they want to share their gifts with the world, and they want to heal the world. They don't necessarily have the business chops, and they don't know exactly how to run the business side of things. So you've got, you the study part, you had the healing experience, and you kind of mesh it all together, and you teach people how to like do what they're doing for a living and actually make money at it. So tell me a little about that, Women in Wellness, how it was born and what you're doing.
Yeah, I started back in like 2005, 2006, I started teaching, and I was teaching at yoga teacher trainings. I was teaching at a massage school. Then I started teaching at universities. And I've taught like thousands of students over the last 10 years. And it was really, you know, my whole community and all the work I do now was born out of conversations that I had with graduates once they left the training or the certification or the university and they started to go out into the world to practice. They would call me, they would email me, they would text me and say, I don't know what I'm doing. I just don't like, what am I supposed to be doing right now? Yeah. And we, in our culture, we don't have that transition piece, like that apprenticeship or, you know, the piece that takes you from the study to the practice where you have like a mentor and you have someone holding your hand through that transition. We don't have that. We have, here's your diploma, have a nice day. Right. So I felt like I really needed to fill the gap there. And that's why I created my community and coaching and programs and stuff, was just to create something to support people.
And inside of that program, were there specifics that you teach? Is it kind of like a broad everything you need to know to put yourself out there, or what do you find people need the most?
Yeah, I created like a foundational course. It was sort of like a business 101. It was called Women in Wellness Career Training, and it covered like a little bit of everything. Like, okay, here's what you need to know about private sessions. Here's what you need to know about setting up workshops, and here's what you need to know about getting a speaking engagement. Here's what you need to know about publishing an article. I gave them created this sort of like foundational course, which is actually the blueprint of my book, The Blissful Business book that I have on Amazon. It's like 100 pages. And in each chapter, there's exercises for you to do. And everybody tells me like, oh my God, thank God. Like, you've given me a map. Like, I knew I needed to do all these things, but I wasn't clear about, you know, how to do them, where to start. And this gives you like step by step. Okay, here's where you start with social media. You know, here's where you start with the content you're creating. Here's where you know, and it's a great foundational piece that can be like a guidebook. And so that's what the course is. And then when I taught the course the first time, there was a live component where we would do these Zoom calls like you and I are doing now, but with like the whole class. And they would get to talk about the homework and talk about what they learned and share their concerns. And that was like a magical thing that everybody said when they finished, that the best part for them, the most inspiring, motivating piece was these conversations where they could really not only talk and share their experience, but then also listen to what everyone else was sharing and feel like they weren't alone, that they weren't like the only one in the world who didn't get it or felt scared.
There's something about community, and we're all in this together, and we're all struggling with the same things. Because especially as an entrepreneur, sometimes you feel like alone if you don't have that guidebook or that coach or that community to help lift you up. You know, some days are better than others, and you know, so sometimes you need that. Like, oh, I've been through this too. You'll make it. That's nothing. Just, you know, just keep going.
Yeah, they were super shocked. Like, if one person on the call would share, like, oh, I'm having a lot of trouble figuring out, like, who my target client is and like what my need. And then everybody else on the call would be like, me too. They'd be like, really? Like they would be surprised to hear that other people had the same challenges. So I continue that.
Like all entrepreneurial circles, no matter what the industry, I think that's a common thing. And that's why community is so great when you're, you know, that you're not in this alone. We've all had the same struggles and we've all, you know, done the same trial and error, and some ideas are better than others, and you have to bury some of them and, you know, move on to the next one. So it's all part of it. And you did that too. I'm not a failure.
Yeah. So when they told me that, I was surprised because I thought that, you know, more than anything, people needed the instructions, right? Like like this is what you do. And it wasn't so much that they needed this is what you do. It was more about like, this is how you overcome your own insecurities and do it. This is how you know, break through your fear of failure or your fear of success and show up for your business every day. Like, it was more about, you know, the how and less about like, okay, I need to set up my Facebook page and run my Facebook ads. Like, there's a lot of that out there, but even with all that information available, they still weren't doing it.
Yeah. So the block was something internal versus external.
Yeah. And I wasn't expecting that. I like, looking back now, it's kind of naive, but I didn't think that there would be such a focus on the mindset and the accountability and stuff. And really that's what I think the value is of my community is that they know when they show up on the weekly calls, I'm going to be like, okay, last week you said you were doing X, like
accountability.
And they're like, no. And I'm like, wait, why? What's going on?
Yeah.
And, you know, then you can make more progress. And
and I'm kind of a little bit of like of a mastermind junkie. I've been in so many different programs over the years, and I love it. Well, you know, because I have an internal desire to learn and grow, but also just the community aspect, and we're in this together, and you just learn from each other and inspired by each other too. And it's to lift other people up and to be lifted up. It's just this nice little circle.
Yeah.
Going on.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm a huge fan of community.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So I wanted to talk a little bit. So one of the reasons I was inspired to do this interview series was to focus on stories. So, you know, in my work, I do storytelling and I help people, you know, own their story and write their story. And I think story is so important to business because you are such a big part of your business. You can't just, you know, I'm going to show up my business as this person that the world wants to see, and I'm going to go home and I'm going to be someone else, you know.
Yeah.
So bring the real you to all of it. People are going to love it, but people are a little bit, you know, sometimes worried about that. They don't feel right. But you, I think, do an excellent job. I mean, I've seen you share through social media and just some really personal things about your life and your story, and you're vulnerable, but then you come to it from a place of inspiration. And so I wanted just to talk to you about that. I mean, do you want to share an example of maybe one of the vulnerable posts you shared?
Yeah.
And, not just what you shared, but also like, how did you feel before you shared it? And then after you got your feedback and stuff.
That's the good stuff.
Yeah.
Mostly like terrified and panic attack and like, mostly like, what? I've been on a journey with storytelling for a long time because as I wrote in one of the recent posts that I posted, when I was young, my father started abusing my mother. I grew up in a family of domestic violence. And the message that I got from my mom was like, you know, calm down, let it go, keep it to yourself. Like I was told like, you know, to just, to be quiet about it. And so I stayed very quiet about it. And so much so that the posting that I wrote about my dad hitting my mom, one of my cousins, that's been my cousin for 42 years, she responded to the post and said, I had no idea this was happening.
Yeah.
And it happened for my entire childhood, but because I was silenced and told to be silent, I never told her. And we were close. With this cousin, we spent a lot of time together, and she had no idea, which tells you the kind of level of like, you know, silence and suppression. And then I found a writing teacher when I was living in Los Angeles who encouraged me to start writing some of my stories. And I started writing some of my stories, and just the floodgates opened. I wrote like 500 pages of stories.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
About like my dad was an addict, and you know, I grew up in violence, and then like the series of adventures of my life that came after that.
That you had previously like suppressed, I would assume.
Well, I was ashamed because, you know, like I thought that if anybody knew these stories, they would think that girl is crazy and messy and like I can't be trusted. Like I just thought that I would be rejected by the world if I told the stories because they were so, you know, just dark and violent.
You have that fear of being judged for who you really are.
Yeah. And then, so as I was writing my stories, I was also reading a lot of memoir. I mean, I must have read 200 or 300 memoirs about people with like addictions and, you know, people with eating disorders, people like everything. I've read so many memoirs, and I had the feeling when I was reading the memoir, like, thank God this person told me their story because it gives me permission to own my own story. And I don't, like, when I read a memoir and someone says like, oh, like I was abused or I had an addiction or something, I don't judge them. I'm like, I see them as like a beacon of strength and truth and courage. And so I was like, okay, so maybe I can tell like a little teeny tiny like bit of my, like maybe I can just put a little bit out there and see what happens.
Yeah.
And I would sort of put out like teeny tiny little bits, and people would say, like, that's so beautiful. Like that, thank you so much for sharing that with me. And you're such an inspiration. And then it was like, oh, it like clicked in my head that they weren't going to reject me. Like they weren't going to shun me or, you know, tell me to, you know.
Right. Yeah. And that's so important. That's such a good point, because I think everyone kind of has that, you know, that feeling like, oh, if I told them this, they're not going to want to work with me. They're going to judge me. They're going to think I'm lesser person. Like I think we all go through that. And I know when I work with people on their story, that's like, they fear that, you know, because being vulnerable is like opening up and you're exposing all of your wounds that we've been like taught our whole life. No, you got to protect that. Don't let anyone see it. But
right.
Vulnerability is actually beautiful and powerful, because stories, when you hold them in, they help that energy. It consumes you. You know, when you let it all out, it has no power over you anymore, except for like strength.
Yeah.
So I think that's a beautiful share. So then you started sharing a little more.
Yeah, then I started sharing. And then one of the major things that was holding me back was that I knew my dad would kill me if I told the whole story. So I wrote the whole story down, seriously, like hundreds and hundreds of pages. And I just kept it, you know, in the back of the closet. And then my dad passed 2 years ago.
Gotcha.
And then I was like, okay, like my dad, you know, like there's nothing he can say or do if I tell my story. And so the last 2 years have been really a blossoming for me, because I've given myself permission to go into public places. Like I just gave a talk 2 weeks ago on a cruise. And I stood up and I told the story to a group of people. And I said to them, I've never said this in public before, because I thought for sure like, my dad would just, you know, what are you doing?
Well, you want to protect the people.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
So I've recently come into like, you know, more openness, more transparency, more vulnerability now, because both my parents have passed, you know, and so I don't have to protect that anymore, like those relationships. And, you know, my brothers and sisters and people, like, it's like everybody, we're all on the same page. So that was a huge consideration for me. And for a lot of authors that write memoir and people that tell their story, I think that's a big part of the decision about how much do you disclose. Because if it's about your partner or your family, you know, there can be consequences.
Yeah, right. It's not just you that's you have to think about other people's feelings.
Yeah.
I understand that aspect of it too. Yeah. But it is liberating when you're able to put it out there. And what has shifted in your life since you've been able to come to terms with
people come up to me. Like I had someone, after I did the talk, I posted a video of the talk, and someone that I know came up to me and he's like, oh my God, I watched the talk. He's like, it was mind blowing. He's like, I have a similar story and I never tell anybody, and I feel like ashamed of my story, and I want to tell my story. I want to do what you did. And then I was like, yeah, I was like, do it. I'll support you, whatever you need. Like, just, you know, and we talked through his story, and he got like really clear about the story. And then last night there was this event, and he told a story at the event, and it was like, it's like a miracle when you watch someone go from, you know, having that like hidden shameful thing to like coming out. And then the room was captivated by his story, and they were like, whoa. And it was just, it's like a miracle to watch that. So that's what I think is such a significant value in telling your story, is that if it then creates this ripple effect that someone else tells their story and someone else tells their story, then it's like, yay! Like everybody's like coming out.
We can all walk around without this like weight on our shoulders. It's nice. Yeah.
That's what I think is so fun.
People think too, from a business standpoint, like, well, I own a business, you know, so that's different. You don't want to put your personal stuff out there because that's bad for business. I think that's a common, like, old school, like, misconception. You know, there's that old corporate, like, never let them see you sweat, and like, you know, don't ever talk about your failures. But I think that's very old school. I think people want authentic. They want the real you, especially we're so digital and we're online and things aren't as personal as they used to be. So we want to see the real you. We want to know, who am I working with? Who are you? And I like people more when they share, like when I know they're being honest, even if they've had some mistakes versus, you know, putting this perfect polished, you know, phony image out there. So, I mean, from a business standpoint, I mean, have you had any experience, positive or negative, from sharing?
Yeah, I think it's positive. I think one of the considerations, because I encourage the women in my community to do this as well, you know, like in their newsletters or their social media, I encourage them. Well, I think there's a couple of things. Like, one thing is we've definitely made this shift to being more authentic and more vulnerable. I mean, like Brené Brown's talk is like the most popular TED Talk of all time. And like we've definitely made this shift. One of the things that the women in my community have to take into consideration is what level of disclosure is appropriate for their practice.
Right.
So, for example, I have some women in my community that are psychologists and they do hardcore psychotherapy with people. And I have some women in my community that they come from like an HR background and they do like more executive kind of corporate-y stuff. So the level of disclosure that they put into their business marketing materials and their social media, it's not that they can't be transparent or they can't be authentic, but the level of disclosure and the content needs to match the audience.
Right.
You know, whereas me, like, I'm doing holistic health and wellness and I work for myself and I can say whatever I want, and I'm saying it intentionally to do, you know, to be that catalyst for other people to, you know, to do, you know, their sharing and everything. But I do think that there is, you know, there's some consideration around disclosure depending on
your intention and your career and all that.
Yes.
And then from a personal standpoint too, you have to be able to share it and not like, you know, have severe anxiety and like
break down,
never sleep again. Like, you know, it's good. Like you said, you just started sharing little pieces here and there. And then you got that encouragement. Like people were like, oh my God, this is beautiful. And then you're like feeling braver and braver to share more and more. So sometimes maybe taking those little baby steps too is appropriate.
Definitely. Definitely.
Cool. Well, another thing I wanted to talk about, so we've talked about this a little bit in the past and about, you know, being authentic in business and also people knowing who they're working with are being authentic. You know, you see a lot of marketing out there or you have these business gurus and they promise, you know, follow my 10-step program and you're going to make 6 or 7 figures and, you know, next month, like all this stuff. And some of them are good. I mean, some of them have good advice. So, you know, I don't want to knock other people's business models, but there's a lot of stuff out there that, you know, people I hear constantly, people have spent all this money, thousands and thousands of dollars on coaching and programs, and they still aren't making any money in their business. And, you know, why do you think that maybe happens? Are people getting kind of suckered into spending money with the wrong people? Or, you know, are they not taking away the right things, or what do you think is going on out there and why?
Yeah, I see the same thing. And I've written rants about it on my blog a couple of times. Like, I mean, I think there's a couple of things. One is that, there's no one size fits all, which you and I have talked about. There is no 10 steps that's going to make everybody the same amount of money and get the same amount of followers. That just doesn't exist. So like, that's a fantasy. I think people like that fantasy because it's the same thing like when people go to lose weight, right? It's like Weight Watchers, you lose all the weight, you know, like that's the only thing you're ever going to have to do. I think people like the idea that there is a quick fix.
Yeah.
We've gotten in the habit of that. Go to the doctor, get a pill. You know, it's like, it's nice to believe that there is something that you can just buy that's going to make your business work. I also think that some of it is that we like to procrastinate by signing up for more and more masterminds and like, I mean, I know when I first got started, I felt like I had to take every webinar and I had to, do every program. And at some point I was like, what am I doing? Like, why am I taking all these things? Like, because the stuff that I haven't even implemented the stuff that I learned in the last webinar, and I'm like taking another webinar. Right. So I do think that there's this kind of like eating like potato chips out of the bag. Like you eat a chip and then another chip, and the next you're like, oh my God, I ate all the chips. Yeah. So there's something about them that they're fun, and you are learning and you're meeting people, and I think it can become a little bit addictive in that way. And then the last thing is that I think that there's different kinds of education and tools that are appropriate at different levels in your business, but nobody tells you that. Mm-hmm. Like in the first year, there's certain tools you should be using, but like if it's the first year of your business, don't sign up for Infusionsoft. Right. Like, don't.
If you have no email subscribers, don't spend all that money. No.
Yeah, like when you have, 5,000, 10,000, whatever, 20,000 people, and you want to segment your lists and you want to make funnels, great. But it's like there's a protocol of things, and you need to do some things before other things, but nobody really tells you. And if you've never built a business and you don't know anything about marketing and sales, then you don't know the difference between your email list and your sales funnel and your SEO and your something else. You don't know what any of that is.
And then people start feeling bad about themselves. Like, what's wrong with me? Like, this person went from $0 to $1 million doing this. And why can't I, make $100? What's wrong with me? And it's like, it's kind of a psychological thing too that starts happening.
Yes.
I've heard that story, the same as you. Like, people are, I spent all this money and I still don't, what's wrong with me? I'm like, well, nothing's wrong with you, but that 10-step system worked for them because, they're a different person. They're in a different industry. Their path, everyone's path is different. So maybe step 2 and step 8 will work for you. Forget the rest. Let's work on those others. What are those other steps for you?
Yeah.
Very individual. There's no like one size.
It's like diet. It's like exercise. It's like relationships. It's like everything else. Like some people are like paleo, vegan. Like, no, like you have to see what works for your body, for your blood type, for your, whatever conditions. It's the same thing with business. There's not a one size.
Yeah. And I think there's a big internal factor of business too. Like, what are you on this earth to do? Who are you on this earth to serve? Like, what drives you? What are you passionate about? So something that you can stand for and really feel passionate about versus, oh, well, this person made a lot of money doing this, or, this person told me this is a good business to get into. So that, that's the first things first is you have to be aligned with it. And then also to like check in with yourself for like, what should I be doing today? Is this a good partnership? Is this, and you only are the only one that has that answer. No business guru is going to be able, they can guide you, but you ultimately always have to make the decision. So people do that too, and also empower themselves that, that.
That's exactly what I was going to say, that you can learn to trust yourself, that you educate yourself, inform yourself, surround yourself with, good people, and that you get to the point where you can trust, that you're purpose driven, that you have a mission, because you have to make unlimited decisions. Like, from the minute you get up until the minute you go to bed, there's unlimited decisions to make. There's nobody, giving you your like to-do list for the day or deliverables for the month. Like, you are your own boss. And that's like, I've heard the term decision fatigue, like that there's like, oh my God, how do I decide all these things? It comes from trust. It comes from getting clarity and empowering yourself and trusting yourself.
And I tell people a lot, just get out of your head a little bit and get more into your heart. And sometimes they look at me like I have 3 heads, like, what does that mean? But it's like that, like, trust to get out of your head. Don't be so heady about it. Like, oh, is this the right decision? Just like take some breaths, get centered. Okay. And just feel your way through it a little bit. And that sounds really hokey, but it really works. If you can like develop a little bit of intuition and just trust, like you said, you'll be surprised how wise you are. That's what it's true.
I totally agree.
But on that same note, so one question I've been asking all the guests is, since not all business is one size fit all, so you might have gotten like the greatest advice in the world, but then you put it to use in your business and it wasn't such good advice after all. Can you think of any examples when that's ever happened in your business?
Yeah, I think I was thinking about that when I saw, and I was like, oh, what bad advice, what bad advice. I think at one point years ago, it was maybe like 2008-ish, I had a mentor and I said to the mentor, I need like a business course. I need just a spreadsheets and accounting, and like I need to go. I was like, maybe I should get an MBA, or maybe I should do some kind of business training, because I feel like I'm not grounded in, you know, the actual strategy and structure and numbers, and it's making me feel really insecure. And he was like, you don't need that. Like, you just rely on like your creativity and your intelligence and whatever, because that wasn't like, that also wasn't his strength. His strength was like creativity and writing and, you know, all these other things. And he was just like, you don't need that. And in retrospect, I don't think that was good advice.
Right.
In retrospect, I think that it's very valuable to have a well-rounded education. So yes, if the majority of your strength is in helping people heal or doing great writing, or like, if that's the majority of your strength, that's amazing and you should cultivate that. But I think in order to have a well-rounded wheel that can keep rolling you forward, you also need to have a certain level of competency, you know, and skill in, you know, you need a little bit of business, a little bit of marketing, a little bit of sales. I mean, you need like a little bit of these other things, even if it's just enough to hire the right person.
That's what I was going to say.
That's enough to be able to interview somebody and understand their credentials and what they can do and evaluate that. I don't think you should just focus on your passion. I think that you should try to be more well-rounded.
And that's good advice too, because I know for example, I tend to be more creative, and like I hate accounting, like anything accounting, like numbers, I just like go cross-eyed. But you know, I still know enough about it. Like I could do it if I had to. I could do my own taxes. I would hate every second of it. But it's important like to at least know enough so that whoever you're hiring the right person, you're asking the right questions, you can see the work after it's done, and you know, or even just be able to read your own financials to know, you know, where you're going, where you've been, and, you know, can't rely totally on other people. Definitely outsource your weaknesses, but still educate yourself enough to have a basic knowledge. That's really good advice.
Yeah. That's been really important for me.
Yeah. Well, I can't believe it, but our 30 minutes is just about up. So I wanted to make sure people know where they can find you, and if they want to get in touch with you or see more about your work, which they do, where should they go?
Yeah. So you can go to my website, women-in-wellness.com is the easiest way to find it. It's also my name, GabriellePelicci.com. It'll take you to the same place. And you'll find a lot of really cool stuff there. Like, first of all, I have a podcast, a Women in Wellness podcast with like 75 amazing interviews. You'll love all of them. It's all really good advice. There's, you know, also tons of blogs with different kinds of tips and tools. Like, and some of them I tell you, like, this is the booking system I use. This is, you know, these are all the different technology things I use to run my business. So there's really good blogs and stuff there. There's a free meditation download to help you get clarity about your business. There's links to sign up for a free discovery session with me. So I offer everyone free 20-minute conversation if you want to tell me what's happening in your practice and get some feedback. So it's a great resource. It's someplace that you can get a lot of cool stuff, a lot of free content. And yeah, you can sign up for a conversation with me anytime. We can have a chat.
Yay. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. So that was women-in-wellness.com, or you can also click through the rebellentrepreneur.biz to find her website. So thank you so much, Gabby.
Thank you, Dawn.
All right. Bye.